than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound, and he wants to eat your face. Hello, friends and horror fans, and welcome to another video where today we'll be talking about something I'm very passionate about, which is a big niche in the horror genre, which is superhero horror. Now, when you think superhero horror, which we'll touch on a lot of these, you're probably going to immediately go to the big one, like DC's, Marvel Zombies, and stuff like that. You might even think of single characters and their villains and go, oh, I've never thought about it like that, but yeah, they are horror. And I'm here to kind of talk about that, have a discussion about that, and open up the ability to maybe even put some more people onto a genre I hold dear, or rather subgenre of horror. So let's get straight into it. First, I want to talk about the obvious ones. DCeased, Marvel Zombies. There's nothing more obvious than turning a, beloved comic company and going, now let's make them undead. Obviously, there's nothing scarier than a zombie. Taking something that is as simple as, people who have, we've gotten to a point where we've evolved to have very few predators to do our structures and our weaponry and such, to now go, okay, you now have an unstoppable force that is your predator. Now give them superpowers and it's worse. Though out of the two, and I might be biased here, I personally think Marvel Zombies does it best. Not Marvel, sorry, DC's. They constantly answer questions of, oh, well, what if blank, with a very natural and thought out answer. It's not too serious, but not too dumb. It takes itself just seriously enough while playing with the sort of material they have. Things like Black Adam's lightning, you being able to infect people, the zombies not being able to cross water, so the Atom carrying them over on his giant hands, the fact that there are kaiju zombies as well as basic, infected as well, like through characters who can become giant, is terrifying. Speedsters being able to, infect the entire planet in a matter of seconds, as well as obviously the catalyst of it being a very well thought out way via screens. Though I find one of the standout reasons it's terrifying is early on it answers a simple question. If you have someone like Superman, how do you even handle, how does this even get that far? Well, they answer that very easily by having him be the only person who could take out the speedsters. And that's part of what I love about DCeased, is it takes a simple concept and it really masters it. So that obviously those are the, obvious ones. But let's move on to some more specific cases, right? DC versus vampires. Playing with that sort of paranoia that it could be you, it could be me, it could even be sort of horror. And just to make it clear, this isn't all DC. We're going by company, of course. But something like that just being another example of take existing characters, flop them to be sort of a different type of horror. And one of the most interesting ways they use the power for me is Green Lantern's ability to use hard light being used as a way to shield himself against the sun and hide amongst them during the day, as well as the constructs being able to often get rid of people in an instant. Think like what happened with the Wonder Twins. It's such an interesting way to handle those sort of powers, as well as Wonder Woman, right? Wonder Woman was another big one to get infected. That is horrible. And obviously the Bat Family having the sort of brains to incognito, having them hide among you while still being smart enough, because they are still who they are, to handle that sort of deceit is also really terrifying, very horrifying. Moving on. While I haven't read that much of it, I would also like to touch on the Absolute Universe. Absolute Universe having some of the most horror DC has had in a sort of natural non-horror run. Things like Absolute Martian Manhunter being sort of psychological at times, while not horror, of course. Absolute Green Lantern being borderline cosmic horror. Do I even need to say more on Absolute Superman, Absolute Wonder Woman having the whole hell backdrop? It's so much in the way of making it horrifying and making this feel like a terrible universe to live in. Don't even get me started on Absolute Batman. all of his villains are obviously much like all of the Absolute Universe pushed to their absolute extreme, where Batman has always had, this is my mini segment, but Batman has always had horror adjacent villains, you know? That's never been competition, whether it be Professor Pig, whether it be the Dollmaker, whether it be, you know, Scarecrow or Croc. He has always had very horror adjacent villains and been very horror in its own way. So obviously the Absolute Universe takes that to the extreme with things like Joker being a man-eating monster, you know, Scarecrow being that. And for me, the standout being Absolute Mr. Freeze. I mean, that thing looks like it belongs in Dead by Daylight. I mean, I once had a dream, funnily enough, where he was a cosmetic for the Singularity. But that's a different talk for a different video. Our DC segment, I wanted to also speak on Blackest Night. Blackest Night is, in my opinion, the best horror comic ever made. I mean, taking, again, the knowing, having the personality and powers of the superheroes is already terrifying enough. Make them undead and sort of emotionally manipulative, but also being, well, zombies with superpowers. It is horrible. Black Hand is one of the scariest villains. I would say that he is one of the best necromancers ever, in my opinion. He's my personal favorite comic villain of all time. But standout scenes being things like Superman coming back to life and manipulating John. Obviously, Nightwing's family coming back and trying to manipulate him into their cause. There's so many standout scenes for these sort of DC horror within Blackest Night that I could talk about it all day, but that would have to probably be another vid. The Teen Titans versus sort of their previous mentors and stuff, it's all very terrifying stuff, and obviously that is an undeniable horror comic, but it's just something I wanted to mention as I close out the segment because I don't need to explain that. And with that being said, I would like to move on to the Marvel aspect of it. I'd also like to mention real quick, just shout out Brainiac also being borderline cosmic horror. However, I would like to start this by saying I've mostly only seen the films. I'm not a huge Marvel fan, but I wanted to include them however I could. Now let's start. Obviously, Marvel's got its fair share of horror, from Marvel Zombies to other characters. Keep in mind, I don't know everything about them, so they might not be as horror as I think, but characters like Null and Gore the God Killer. But the ones I want to touch on are Blade. Blade's whole backdrop is vampires. He is like, I've always said, he is like the comic equivalent of a Belmont from Castlevania, which obviously is horror in its own right. While obviously action horror, it is undeniably horror. Blade is a Demfire who fights vampires. There's nothing deniable about the horror in that. But even when Blade gets more fantastical, say in things like Marvel Rivals, where he's actively taking on Null and the symbiote planet, whatever, which we'll touch on that in a little bit, it is still terrifying. He's still going after, he still goes after legions of undead and cosmic horrors, and all while obviously taking down vampires and being one himself. There is nothing deniable about Blade's horror. Moving on, I want to talk about Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider is much like a character we'll cover later, Spawn. Much like Blade, he is also very horror by way of being a sort of undead creature. I mean, he literally sends people's souls to hell and inflicts their own sins upon them. That is incredibly metal and incredibly, well, horror. I mean, from what little I've seen of it, it is terrible. The next character I wanted to speak on, because I'm only speaking as much as I know them, is obviously Venom and Carnage. And I would like to specifically talk about when Venom was a villain. I mean, he eats people. He's a cosmic parasite and is that. He's obviously a monster. Nobody's going to challenge you on Venom. I mean, you go, oh, hey, what's a DVD killer that could be from Marvel? And obviously everyone's go, Venom. I don't think I have to say much about that. But the way I feel Venom has a special type of horror, getting to sort of see it infect a hero and change them before becoming a sort of evolved version. The full monster it was meant to become via Eddie Brock. But Venom is obviously undeniably terror. But I feel that when everyone talks about Venom, everyone forgets what I personally think would be a better option, what I think is scarier, which is Carnage. Carnage is all of that, but bonded to a serial killer, someone who is, by definition, very terrifying. I mean, you plop him in sort of a slasher scenario, and obviously people are going to be afraid, but it is, all of these have one thing in common, which is you take something that's already horror and give it superpowers, and it is a whole unique type of horror. Because how do you run from something that's that terrifying? It reminds me a lot of playing Prototype, which is actually one of my favorite games. But that's another thing worth noting in another vid is also things like Infamous and Prototype having horror adjacency with superpowers, but that's something for a different day, of course. But yeah, sorry the Marvel segment was shorter. I just don't like to talk unless I know stuff about it. So I didn't want to talk more than I knew. But feel free to tell me all about it in the comments and stuff. No, that's why. That's not even getting into Galactus, who is obviously the cosmic horror of Marvel, at least one of them. I mean, you look up any panel of Galactus from like Marvel, and he is terrifying. I mean, especially the Marvel Zombies one when he's eating the planet, which obviously is a basic one to go for because everyone does that. But Galactus is another one that, like, when I think Marvel horror, I just picture Galactus. I picture Galactus, Venom, Ghost Rider, and obviously Blade. Why we're doing a discussion. The next thing I'd like to talk about is Brightburn, which is obviously the superhero horror film. So Brightburn is a divisive horror film, and a divisive superhero film in general. You either really like it or you really hate it. Obviously, being a huge fan of the niche, I really, really, really like it. There's so many scenes where they expertly use his powers, like the car scene where he lifts up his uncle and then just drops the car and his jaw is barely hanging on. The scene where he's swooshing in and out of the house is especially terrible. And you can't forget the kills with the laser ice, which is obviously a classic. There's so many good kills in Brightburn, but that to say that it is a perfect example of how, in my opinion, superhero horror can be so good. It is no short of, in my opinion, terrifying, where if you are into that niche, it will scare you, or at least go, woo, that sort of thing. But that Brightburn is just so good. If you haven't had a chance, please go watch it. To close out this video, I wanted to talk about a few independent characters. Spawn, Haunt, and Hellboy. Perfect examples of how comic horror can be so good. Spawn taking another niche I really like, which is sort of religious horror. And when I say that, I don't mean or as I like to call it, Abrahamic horror. Which, most people, you say that and they think generic spiritual movies where it's like, oh, the MacGuffin is religion and it's a demon and whatever. I mean things like The Judgment from Dead by Daylight. While not the same kind, not horror, Zamasu from Dragon Ball Super. And obviously a lot of Spawn's villains. So Spawn by default is obviously the horror comic everyone thinks of. I mean, he's literally a creature from hell, brought to take souls. Classic deal with the devil type story, right? A la Cuphead. I'm joking. But Spawn's my personal favorite superhero, probably of all time. Probably that, or it's either tied with Green Lantern, Hal Jordan. Anyhow. But you look at the backdrop, his villains, especially early on, it's the Clown, Violator, it's, the Redeemer, it's the Angels. They are all horrible in their own way, but something I want to highlight are sort of his grounded villains, but also his fantastical ones, starting with someone like Billy Kincaid, who is a very grounded, at-home sort of horror. It is sort of like Ice Cream Man meets Freddy Krueger. It's that sort of horror next door, as I like to call it. The Redeemer, which is sort of everything terrifying about the Hellspawn, but flipped. Obviously, when Billy Kincaid comes back as a Hell Spawn is another example of the sheer terror in Spawn. But another one I really want to highlight is King Spawn, Nightmare Spawn, Omega Spawn. These are all really terrifying concepts, but especially Divine Spawn's concept of being able to flip that, but also getting to see that, well, heaven is just as bad as the depths of hell. But that was, by what I mean when I say like divine Spawn is especially terrifying is getting to see the finishing off of that sort of era, but into the next one of, well, not next one, but into the consequences being revealed in King Spawn. King Spawn is, in my opinion, the absolute peak for some of Spawn's darker elements, from, you know, how it can become that sort of mass murder horror next door just because they're trying to get to him. Sort of, you know, the heaven and hell aspects coming to a complete, well, absolute for via the child versions of, you know, God and the devil. Billy Kincaid coming back again. All of these culminate in a horrific backdrop for Spawn. And I don't need to explain more than that. He is undeniably horror, but I wanted to give him his just desserts in a segment. Not to mention that this has been going on for, you know, forever, which adds an extra layer of horror in it, of this being reality for as long as we've known it without ever knowing it. And Haunt is a similar case to Spawn. Haunt has a lot in common with Spawn, obviously being made by a lot of the same people, at least artistically and creatively. Still having that sort of hyper-violence symbiote, but having these sort of same supernatural elements often crossing over with Spawn. But what I wanted to focus on are these supernatural elements. I mean, two people in one body, creating a supernatural entity capable of creating strands of liquid and stuff that can pierce through people and turn into blades and shit. I mean, that is pretty good. But a kind of, where it's not as horror as Spawn, because he's a street level hero and often goes, well, anti-hero, and is going after things like organizations and stuff, much like Spawn. But Spawn always had a backdrop of horror because of the whole heaven and hell, and the clown, Violator, Malboja being there ASAP in Spawn's run. But Haunt himself is undeniably horror and gives the book an element of horror adjacency seen in things like Mortal Kombat. So I think it is absolutely worth mentioning in a segment in a comic book / superhero horror vid. Finally, Hellboy. While Hellboy might fight monster, like, you know, street level, whatever, and might not be, you know, outright horror all the time, he is absolutely, in my opinion, up there with Spawn. I mean, he is a hell spawn of sorts, fighting against things like undead World War II people, well, kind of, monsters on the daily, working in an organization of monsters consisting of a creature from Black Lagoon looking guy. The film alone, he's going after spirits, demons, you know, vampires, undead creatures alike, sea monsters too. I mean, all of this is absolutely horror. I would say oftentimes it borders on gothic horror, depending on the thing, obviously. The Golden Army is also a great case of the kind of thing that I feel makes Hellboy absolutely horror. Not to mention, obviously, the violence. Not that violence makes something horror by default, but I think that also adds to the sort of culmination of ideas that creates Hellboy's world of horror. I mean, Hellboy, by definition, is monsters and stuff, and I find that he reminds me a lot of the Universal monsters. So I would say he fits. To close out this vid, the last one I wanted to talk about is The Mask. Well, The Mask is not horror per se, outright horror. It does have a horror adjacency via its supernatural elements, its ties to mythology, and obviously the way he uses his powers. I mean, this Stanley is an absolute loser who gets the powers of a god and decides to go postal. I mean, in my opinion, that is absolutely horror, and I'm sure it probably is considered horror. I don't know for certain. But when you look at things like that scene where he, is president, and the way he uses Toon Force abilities for murder, it is a brutality that I've only ever seen in Spawn, or even Ice Cream Man. Point being that the mask is absolutely brutal enough and dark enough and has those supernatural elements enough that I feel like it should be considered up there with the grades of horror comics. But that's really all I have to say about this one. This one's a big passion vid for me. I wanted to speak on this niche for so long. I love superhero horror, so hopefully, if you're a fan of it, this made you feel seen and made you at least say hell yeah or something. And if you're not a fan, I hope that this encourages you to at least read Deceased or Blackest Night or Marvel Zombies or Spawn. I hope this encouraged you to explore my favorite niche genre and, take a tour, see the sites, get everything it has to offer. And with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this one. If you liked it, subscribe to each stuff, it goes a long way. If you dislike, share it in a group chat to make fun of me, my stupid video, and I'll see you Space Cowboy. It's a bird, it's a plane, he wants to eat your face.